I'd say has been the strangest year I can remember in my life. It started out with tornadoes in February that devastated Middle Tennessee. And before we could even clean it up, we all got sent to our rooms with COVID-19 lockdown. And it was really frightening because our organization has a large number of people who fall into that high risk group, either for age or health reasons, or they take care of a parent, or they have children at home. So it was a real time of fear, I think, more than anything else. And we couldn't figure out how to help in our community. We were homebound, literally. But everything started crashing at one time. We went from being in class on Wednesday to on Friday being totally locked down. The first thing to crash, of course, was our plant sale in April. So all the master gardeners who had been growing plants for the sale were left with hundreds of plants with nowhere to go. So everybody jumped on their neighborhood watch page. They called friends, they called relatives, they put them at the end of the driveway, come by, pick them up. And with every one of them, I put in a slip of paper that says, this is our website. You can find research-based information here to help you. There were so many people doing first-time gardening. And it was no surprise because our distributions lines were disrupted. There was nothing coming in from overseas. Chicken and meat packing plants were closed because of COVID infection. It was a no-brainer that the grocery bill was going to get really high. So we had a lot of input via email and phone calls and the website with people just starting. And, you know, we labeled them victory gardens because that's exactly what they were. From then on, things just snowballed. As you know, 4th of July fireworks, rodeos, 4-H, everything shut down. I think probably one of the hardest hit groups was our Speakers Bureau. They had no time to adjust to the fact that they would not be standing in front of people in a library. The libraries went down. But they quickly, with the help of our IT team, they quickly jumped in, they learned how to Zoom, and then they were able to offer our community Zoom-based with the library's assistance. So they still had to register, so the library knew how many people were logging on, and they have done a phenomenal job. No, we have not been able to do as many talks as we would have if libraries had been open, but they've certainly filled in the gap in a very quick amount of time. The group that was hardest hit were our Master Gardener interns. They had 4 classes. They went from that 4th class on Wednesday to a complete and total lockdown on Friday. No more classes, couldn't leave their house. Again, I had some high-risk people in the class, but Natalie Bumgarner and her team jumped in there. They created YouTube videos. They were available to do Zooms if people had specific questions. And we did Zoom about planting vegetables when everybody was getting ready to start. Remember, this is a new class of gardeners. So they had a lot of questions, and then Amy Dismuke Zoomed with them about beneficial insects in the garden so they didn't go out spraying ladybugs. But the hardest thing was the volunteer time. This is where, they have to earn 40 hours. So although we'd covered their educational component, they still need to get out and get 40 hours. And this was really difficult, and we could not have done it had the project leaders not gone all out to make every environment as safe as possible.
This was a good year for me. In this particular garden, all the interns needed their hours, and they wanted to go somewhere they were pretty safe and pretty secure. So we set it up so that only 4 people could be here at the same time. And I had a whole calendar schedule, and people would put dibs on what time they were going to come and stuff. And as we got more, reduction in requirements, we were able to have more people here. But yeah, even now, there's relatively few people here at one time, and everybody by now knows what they're doing. And they're in the rose quadrants, going after the weeds or going after the seeds or whatever they do. Nobody's tripping on each other. It's not the kind of volunteer opportunity where you're on top of each other. It's a big garden.
When they closed the carton plantation and there was nobody at all, then I figured, you know what? I can't, this is too small of an area to have safe social distancing. So what I'm going to do is not get groups out here, one person at a time. So I let everybody that works on this project know, you can work in the garden as many hours as you want, you can come as often as you want, but no more than one person at a time. Just let me know what hours you want to be here, what days you want to be here. And so about 3 or 4 people popped up and said, hey, I'll do this, I'll come and weed, and I'll come and put the pine straw down, and I'll come and plant some things. So I ended up with about 4 people that really start coming on a regular basis. And between them and myself planting the tomatoes and the cabbage and things, we ended up with this. And we got 28 plants in here that are half of them are grafted. And this experiment is really moving along pretty well.
We're out here in the open. We're not in the closed quarters of anywhere. We don't wear masks out here. We don't have to. If there is any social distancing, we're social distancing here. We usually don't have more than 5 or 6 people out here at a time, and sometimes less than that. And so I have to decide as a project leader, well, who's working on what do we need to do, what's most pressing, what's the priority, and they go through and do it.
We have a lot of volunteers from church. I would say we probably have about 25 or 30 people. Most of us are over the age of 65 who do the bulk of the work, the main work. But I would say maybe 300 people from the church will come occasionally, once a week, once every 2 weeks. But we also have a lot of people. I mean, if it weren't for the Master Gardeners, that is a huge part of our, particularly now during COVID, it's really helped. But all the time, they have always done a lot of their hours here. And a lot of them come back and volunteer even after they've done all their 40+ hours. So it makes us feel like they feel part of the family, which is nice. We had to set up a schedule because you couldn't have more than 10 out here at a time. Since we're a big enough area, they said we could have 10 at the lower fields and 10 in the upper fields. And we set up 2 shifts each day, one from 8 to 9:30, one from 9:45 to 11:15. That way the first shift could leave, they wouldn't cross over with them, and we had to have strict rules for taking temperature and doing all of those things that you have to do to make sure everybody had to bring their own water instead of us providing it, bring their own trowel and their gloves. When volunteers first started coming, I think they were a little wary, and a lot of people were very uncomfortable unless we monitored everybody and said, you know, you're a little too close, and that's a difficult situation to be in. You hate to address other adults and say, remember, you'd like to talk to your friends, but you have to have social distance. So that became easier because I think people realized that was very important. I think everybody's been very respectful of the changes and has taken them in stride.
They just pulled out all the stops to make everything as safe as possible for the interns, and surprisingly, 18 out of 30 have already certified, which to me is amazing. Matt Horseman at the Ag Center graciously offered anybody who's really afraid to get out, take it again next year for free. And surprisingly, only 4 people took him up on that. And all 4 of those people had very severe health issues, so it was totally understandable. Everybody else is plowing along, and I'm just amazed that they've been able to do this, and they've had fun. I've had so many emails saying this has been a lot of fun. They've had to create a project garden to show our community how much you could put in a very small amount of space with a very limited budget. 3 of those gardens are out at Edible Uprising, and they have been the source of a lot of questions from people out at farmers markets. And so they're out there answering questions, masked, social distancing, everything very safe. We have healing gardens at Carton and Carter House, and we have a large vegetable garden out at the Ag Center. So those gardens have been flourishing. They're having a good time with it. And I'm just amazed and so proud of how well they have done. It's just been wonderful. We have acquired a lot of new technology that I don't want us to lose. I want to continue to be able to offer Zoom talks through the library, whether we have an audience or whether somebody can dial in from home. And this is important for people in a nursing home, homebound for some other reason, traveling. So I think that's a technology I don't want to lose. And then the website team have really made huge strides in upgrading the website and making sure the information is available in an easy to find format. Facebook has launched. We have lots of interaction on Facebook. We get a lot of questions on Facebook. which is terrific because we can answer right there, or we can send them the link to the publication. So I'd say our tech team has probably made the biggest strides forward at this particular point in time. We have found, just in Williamson County, we found lots of ways we can interact. So watch for those. Watch for those opportunities. They're often hidden, but you don't need to just go lock yourself in your home and forget that you are still a master gardener. They rely on us for information. Social distancing, masks, I think these are all critically important, but I think we need to be aware of ways that we can bring them into our circle.